This morning, a defiant President Trump says his tariffs are working and he is not backing down. But hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman, who endorsed Donald Trump for the first time this election, disagrees.
Bill Ackman has fully stepped into the national spotlight, not just as a powerful hedge fund manager, but as one of the most outspoken critics of Donald Trump's economic agenda. What was once just a battle of market philosophies has now turned into a personal and political war playing out across financial networks, social media platforms, and even the campaign trail.
More than 160 million Americans, Mr. Secretary, as you know, are invested in the market. Many of them have spent their lives saving for their retirement. What is your message to Americans who want to retire right now and who've just seen their lifetime savings drop significantly?
The center of the conflict is trade. More specifically, Trump's proposed return to sweeping tariffs and economic nationalism, and Ackman's belief that these ideas could trigger a new era of inflation, instability, and international isolation. Trump has made it clear that if he returns to power or continues to influence Republican lawmakers, he will bring back his signature trade strategy: steep tariffs on imports from China, Mexico, and other major trading partners. He's once again promising to protect American jobs and rebuild American industry by taxing foreign goods and slashing what he sees as unfair trade relationships.
Chris, I think that's a false narrative. Americans who want to retire right now, the Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations of what's happening. And, you know, in fact, most Americans don't have everything in the market. Most Americans in a 401k have what's called a 60-40 account. That is 60 of 40 accounts that are down 5 or 6% on the year. People have a long-term view. They have a program that the reason the stock market is considered a good investment is because it's a long-term investment. If you look day to day, week to week, it's very risky. Over the long term, it's a good investment.
His new proposal includes a 10% universal baseline tariff on all imports, and even higher tariffs targeted at what he calls cheating nations. Trump's team insists this will bring jobs back and revitalize U.S. manufacturing. Ackman is loudly calling that approach a mistake, economically reckless, and politically dangerous. He argues that the U.S. economy in 2025 is far more fragile than it looks on paper. While inflation has cooled from its earlier peaks, prices are still high, housing remains unaffordable for many, and supply chains are still vulnerable from years of global disruptions.
The investor warning: the president has an opportunity to call a 90-day timeout, negotiate, and resolve unfair asymmetric tariff deals. We're heading for a self-induced economic nuclear winter, and we should start hunkering down.
Ackman warns that Trump's tariff-heavy plans would raise prices again, disrupt trade relationships, and worsen the cost of living for everyday Americans. In his words, you can't bring down inflation by launching a trade war. Trump has responded by targeting Ackman directly in speeches and interviews, mocking him as part of the Wall Street elite who doesn't understand working-class Americans.
If I were to say, like, was there any good outcome from COVID? It woke the world up to these supply chain problems. So economic security is national security. President Trump and I have talked about that a lot. So this is a national security issue that we're seeing here, but it's also an economic security issue. And it's to, I don't want to say redistribute, but it is to give working Americans real wage gains and enhance their lives.
He accused Ackman of trying to protect his own financial interests under the guise of economic advice, and labeled him another globalist billionaire who thinks he can run the country through Twitter. In campaign rallies, Trump has started using Ackman as a symbol of the out-of-touch financial elite who want open borders, international control, and no accountability to U.S. voters. The feud is becoming more intense by the day. Ackman is not backing down. He's now holding public discussions with economists, giving lengthy interviews, and releasing open letters where he lays out why he believes Trump's policies would trigger economic disaster.
You know, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. There are more than 50 countries in negotiation with the president. We've got the Prime Minister of Israel coming today. We've had a reach out overnight from Taiwan. And but I would urge everyone, especially Bill, to ease off the rhetoric a little bit. The fact is that say 10% baseline tariff is on what 14% of GDP. That's about how much trade we have, how many imports. And so 86% of GDP is affected by the deregulation and the tax cuts and everything else. And even if you think, and I think a lot of us at the White House think that these economic responses are exaggerated by critics, even if you think that there will be some negative effect from the trade side, that's still a small share of GDP. And so the idea that it's going to be a nuclear winter or something like that is completely irresponsible rhetoric.
He's even reportedly advising several centrist politicians behind the scenes, pushing for a smarter, globally integrated trade framework that promotes American competitiveness without resorting to tariff wars. Some insiders believe he could back an independent presidential candidate or even start his own political movement if Trump's influence grows stronger.
Fire-hot feud between billionaire Trump donor Bill Ackman and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who is now being accused by Ackman of not being an honest player. So, as Ackman spent his weekend pleading with Trump to essentially do a 90-day pause on his tariffs in order to, create some space for trade negotiations, he also jumped into this interesting accusation against Howard Lutnick, who's been making his rounds on cable television in defense of Donald Trump's tariffs policy. He says, "I just figured out why Howard Lutnick is indifferent to the stock market and the economy crashing. He and Cantor are long bonds. He profits when our economy implodes. It's a bad idea to pick a Secretary of Commerce whose firm is levered long fixed income. It's an irreconcilable conflict of interest." Now, Ackman is, of course, talking about Cantor Fitzgerald, which is the financial firm that Howard Lutnick led for 35 years prior to joining the Trump administration. And he's basically just accusing him of being so heavily invested in bonds that, the stock market blowing up as a result of Trump's tariff policies is actually a good thing for those who are heavily invested in bonds.
Now in 2025, the clash between Ackman and Trump is no longer just about policy. It's a cultural war. It's Wall Street versus Main Street, globalism versus nationalism, technocrats versus populists. And it's playing out in real time as both men try to shape the future of the American economy, one through influence and capital, the other through politics and populism. What began as a disagreement over trade is now shaping into one of the defining ideological battles of the post-pandemic era. As the election season intensifies, the clash between Bill Ackman and Donald Trump is becoming harder to ignore. What started as a disagreement over trade has turned into a full-blown public feud. Ackman is sounding the alarm about Trump's proposed tariffs, warning that they could drive up prices for everyday Americans and trigger economic instability. Trump is firing back, claiming his trade strategy is about protecting American workers and rebuilding domestic manufacturing. Their back and forth is spilling into headlines, campaign stops, and financial markets, becoming one of the most talked about issues right now.